Before he became one of the most recognizable redheads in film history, Rupert Grint was just a kid from Hertfordshire, England, with a wild imagination and a love for making people laugh. Born on August 24, 1988, Rupert Alexander Lloyd Grint was the eldest of 5 children in a lively working-class family. His father Nigel dealt in racing memorabilia, and his mother Joanne was a homemaker. Life was simple, a little chaotic, and filled with everyday charm. Even at a young age, Rupert stood out not because he wanted attention, but because he had a natural knack for comedy. In school, he wasn't the loudest or the smartest kid in the room, but he had timing. Whether it was telling a joke, making a goofy face, or jumping into school plays, Rupert had something that made people smile. He later said in interviews that he always loved the idea of performing, and especially enjoyed making people laugh, something that would shape the rest of his life. Interestingly, Rupert never went to a proper acting school before landing the role of a lifetime. His training came from watching TV doing impressions of teachers and performing in local theater. He played a fish in a school play once. Yep, a fish. But it wasn't the size of the role that mattered, it was the feeling of being on stage that hooked him. Rupert was also a huge Harry Potter fan before becoming part of it. Like so many kids his age, he had read the books and fell in love with the magical world. So when he heard about the open casting call for the role of Ron Weasley, he didn't just send in a normal audition tape, he made a rap. A full-on rap about how much he wanted the role. It was weird, funny, and totally Rupert. And guess what? It worked. That moment when a regular kid from the suburbs sent in a homemade rap video and ended up being cast as one of the lead characters in what would become a global phenomenon. That's the kind of story that doesn't happen every day. But for Rupert Grint, it was just the beginning. Let's be honest, millions of kids wanted to be part of Harry Potter. When casting for the first film, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, opened in 1999, it was one of the most anticipated searches in movie history. Every ginger-haired kid in the UK probably thought they had a shot at Ron Weasley, but it was 11-year-old Rupert Grint, armed with a homemade rap and zero professional experience, who caught everyone's attention. Rupert didn't have an agent, a resume, or any idea how these things usually worked. He just knew he loved the books and thought he was Ron. So he got creative. In his audition tape, Rupert dressed in his school uniform and performed a rap about why he should be Ron Weasley. It was charming, funny, and full of personality. That little video was sent straight to the casting team, and somehow it worked. The casting directors were looking for someone who didn't just look like Ron, but felt like Ron, a bit awkward. Funny, warm-hearted, and absolutely loyal. Rupert was that kid. His audition was raw, unpolished, but authentic. And that's exactly what they wanted. After a few more rounds of auditions and screen tests, the final trio was chosen: Daniel Radcliffe as Harry, Emma Watson as Hermione, and Rupert Grint as Ron. That moment, being officially cast, changed everything. In the blink of an eye, Rupert went from a regular school kid to one of the stars of what would become one of the biggest film franchises in history. He later said that the moment he found out he got the role was unreal. He celebrated with his family and could hardly believe it. And while he was thrilled, he was also nervous. The pressure was huge. He'd never even been on a film set before. And now he was about to live out the next decade of his life in front of cameras, growing up with the entire world watching. But even at that young age, Rupert brought something to Ron that no one else could. He had heart timing and a weird, charming energy that made the character unforgettable. The chemistry between him, Daniel, and Emma clicked instantly, and that bond would become one of the most beloved trios in movie history. Most people go through their awkward teenage years behind closed doors, maybe in the privacy of school halls or bedrooms plastered with posters. But Rupert Grint, he did it in front of millions in movie theaters, red carpets, press tours, and under the shadow of a billion-dollar franchise. Starting at just 11 years old, Rupert spent the next decade of his life growing up on the set of Harry Potter. 8 films, 10 years, hundreds of days on set. It wasn't just a job. It was his childhood. The Hogwarts castle wasn't just a film set. For Rupert, Daniel, and Emma, it was a second home. Rupert has often said that the cast and crew became like family. Director Chris Columbus, who helmed the first two films, made sure the environment was fun, playful, and safe for the young actors. But as the series grew darker, more intense, and more adult, so did their lives. Rupert had to balance school with filming, deal with fame, and go through puberty, all with the world watching. Playing Ron Weasley came naturally to Rupert. He wasn't acting too far from who he really was. Loyal, awkward, funny, sometimes insecure. That authenticity made Ron one of the most relatable characters in the series. But as the years went on, Rupert also had to grow with the role. Ron wasn't just comic relief, he had depth jealousy, heartbreak, and bravery. And Rupert had to match that emotional growth on screen. What's remarkable is that despite the fame, Rupert stayed grounded. While Daniel Radcliffe was chasing serious theater and Emma Watson was earning a degree at Brown, Rupert was still trying to figure out who he was beyond the ginger-haired wizard. He once joked that it was strange to finish school and walk into adulthood while still wearing a Gryffindor robe on screen. And yet he never lost his love for the experience. Rupert has always spoken warmly about his time on Harry Potter, the friendships, the absurdity of filming with green screens and rubber wands, the inside jokes, and the final days on set that felt like saying goodbye to family. In interviews, he's admitted that finishing the last film, Deathly Hallows Part 2, was emotional. There were tears. Not just from the cast, but from everyone, the camera crew, the costume designers, even the caterers. For Rupert, it wasn't just the end of a job. It was the end of an era, one that defined his childhood career and identity. When Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 wrapped in 2011, Rupert Grint stood at another crossroads, the end of a magical era and the start of something else entirely. He had spent his entire youth portraying Ron Weasley. Now the world expected to see what he could do without Hogwarts. That transition wasn't easy. Rupert was open about facing uncertainty. Who am I without Ron was a question he grappled with. Casting directors often saw him as the funny redhead, not much else. And the pressure to avoid being pigeonholed was real. Still, Rupert dove into a mix of indie films, television, and stage work to rediscover himself as an actor. He appeared in gritty indie titles like Into the White 2012 and CBGB 2013, showing he wasn't afraid to experiment. On TV, he shone in comedic and dramatic roles, including the British series Snatch 2017-2018, where he played the fast-talking Charlie Cavendish Scott. In 2017, Rupert tackled the stage in the acclaimed West End play Mojo, stepping out of the screen and into live performance. The feedback was positive. Critics noted his ease with dark humor and ability to hold audience attention beyond his Potter image. Though new projects varied in scale and reception, they helped Rupert slowly build a path apart from Ron Weasley. He continued taking projects that interested him, often quirky, character-driven, and unpredictable. On the personal front, Rupert embraced a quieter post-Hogwarts life. He returned to roots in Hertfordshire, sought privacy, and welcomed fatherhood in 2020. Becoming a father he once shared gave him a fresh sense of identity outside the limelight. He remains grounded, focusing on life beyond celebrity. Looking at his trajectory, Rupert's post-Harry Potter years have been less glamorous, but deeply authentic, a journey of rediscovery, experimentation, and reclaiming purpose on his own terms. Fame is a strange thing, especially when it comes so early. For Rupert Grint, becoming a household name before hitting puberty meant growing up with expectations, scrutiny, and very little privacy. While the world saw him as the funny one in the Harry Potter trio behind the scenes, things weren't always so magical. After the series ended, Rupert admitted to feeling a kind of identity crisis. He once said in an interview, "I sometimes wonder whether I ever really wanted to act or if I just fell into it." That kind of honesty is rare, especially in Hollywood. But Rupert never pretended to be anything he wasn't. He talked openly about moments of burnout during the Harry Potter years, waking up and not knowing if he even wanted to keep going. He never disliked the role or the experience, but he did feel like Ron had become so tied to his real identity that it was hard to know where one ended and the other began. It didn't help that the industry often saw him only through the lens of Ron Weasley. Typecasting is a real struggle for many child actors, and Rupert was no exception. He received scripts that felt repetitive, comedic sidekicks, goofy best friends, characters that didn't challenge him. Instead of diving headfirst into Hollywood, Rupert took a step back. He focused on roles that felt right, not just roles that were high profile. He bought an ice cream truck, yes, seriously renovated homes, and spent more time with family. To some, it looked like he was stepping away from acting, but in truth, he was reconnecting with the parts of life he'd missed while growing up on set. This period also gave Rupert the freedom to explore passions beyond film. He got involved in charity work, especially causes supporting children's hospitals and environmental awareness. And slowly, without forcing it, acting found its way back to him on his own terms. Despite the challenges, Rupert stayed grounded. He never chased fame for the sake of it. He wasn't trying to become the next Hollywood heartthrob or awards darling. He just wanted to feel connected to the work again and to himself. And that quiet confidence, that's what made him stand out even more. For someone who grew up under the spotlight, Rupert Grint has always surprised fans with how low-key and grounded his adult life has become. While many expected him to dive deep into celebrity culture, partying, red carpets, endless movie deals, Rupert took the opposite route. He chose quiet. Since the end of Harry Potter, Rupert has kept his private life. Well, private. He's been in a long-term relationship with actress Georgia Groom, best known for Angus thongs and perfect snogging. And in 2020, the couple welcomed their first child, a daughter named Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday. A name as quirky and cool as you might expect from someone like Rupert. Fatherhood changed him. In interviews, Rupert has called it the best thing that's ever happened to him. It gave him a whole new perspective on life, fame, and what truly matters. Suddenly, the rush of Hollywood meant less, and the quiet moments changing diapers, family walks, bedtime stories meant everything. He also finally joined Instagram in 2020, posting a picture with baby Wednesday that nearly broke the internet. In less than 4 hours, he became the fastest person to hit 1 million followers on the platform. And yet, even online, Rupert isn't flashy. No luxury cars, no showing off. Just warm, humorous glimpses into his world. What's refreshing about Rupert is that he never seemed interested in playing the celebrity game. He never chased clout or attention. He doesn't have a team managing his image every step of the way. He's just Rupert. A bit shy, a bit weird, but deeply genuine. He's also a bit of a homebody. Rupert once confessed he's obsessed with interior design and home renovation. He bought a bunch of properties in Hertfordshire and loves restoring old buildings. It's not a rock star lifestyle, but it's real and it makes him happy. In many ways, Rupert's journey after Harry Potter wasn't about outshining Ron Weasley. It was about quietly building a life where he didn't have to prove anything anymore. He could just be himself, a dad, a partner, an actor when it felt right, and a guy who once drove an ice cream truck just because it made kids smile. After years of staying relatively under the radar, Rupert Grint made a surprising and critically praised return to the screen in 2019, with Servant, a psychological horror series created by Tony Basgallup and produced by M. Night Shyamalan. Yes, the Sixth Sense guy. And it wasn't just a cameo or one-off appearance. Rupert took on a major role and he owned it. In Servant, Rupert plays Julian Pierce, the sarcastic, wine-loving brother of the main character caught in a twisted and eerie family situation that involves grief loss and something far more supernatural. It's a slow-burn, stylish show that dives deep into emotional trauma, and Rupert's performance surprisingly intense. This was a very different Rupert Grint than the one we'd seen grow up in Hogwarts. In Servant, he wasn't playing comic relief or a lovable sidekick. Julian is edgy, cynical, and emotionally damaged. And Rupert brought all those layers to life with subtlety and dark humor that earned praise from both fans and critics. In interviews, Rupert said he was nervous about jumping back into a regular acting gig after so long, especially one so emotionally heavy. But working with Shyamalan gave him confidence. It was the kind of project he never would have imagined himself doing during his Potter days, and that's exactly why he said yes. Servant ended up running for 4 seasons, 2019, 2023, and it became a turning point for Rupert's career. It reminded audiences, and probably Rupert himself, that he was capable of more than nostalgia roles. He didn't need to escape Ron Weasley by running from acting. He just had to find the right parts. More importantly, it marked a new chapter, Rupert Grint, not as the child actor you remember, but as a grown artist with range risk and something to say. So how do you measure the success of someone like Rupert Grint? Is it in box office numbers? Awards? Blockbuster deals? Maybe. But for Rupert, it's never been about those things. If Daniel Radcliffe had to wrestle with the shadow of Harry Potter and Emma Watson pivoted into activism and high fashion, Rupert chose something quieter, more personal, a success defined on his own terms. He didn't chase constant fame, nor did he burn out trying to escape it. Instead, he carved out a life that feels refreshingly human. He's a guy who can carry a dramatic role, raise a daughter, restore an old housepost, the occasional Instagram, and still be remembered fondly as Ron Weasley. And that's kind of the magic of Rupert Grint. He may not be in your face all the time, but when he does show up, whether on screen, on social media, or in interviews, there's an authenticity that hits different. He's not acting like he's figured it all out. He's just doing his best, balancing a career with a grounded, fulfilling life. And people love him for it. Rupert also represents something rare in Hollywood, a former child star who grew up normal. No scandals, no downward spiral, no reinventions for the sake of relevance. Just a kid from Hertfordshire who got incredibly famous, stayed kind, and eventually found his way back to himself. For fans, Rupert Grint will always be Ron, loyal, funny, real. But as the years go by, many have come to admire Rupert himself just as much, if not more. Not because he dazzles, but because he's stayed true. In a world obsessed with image and hype, that's a legacy worth celebrating.